So we have citizen comments on the appropriation ordinance and levy from 7:15 to 7:30. So if we have any citizens here who would like to speak, or Natalie or Brian, if you know of any comments that were given to you in advance, no, okay. And I don't, let's see the participants here.
Real quick question, Madam Chair, before we begin. Do we need a motion to make these meetings by remote only?
So as you see at the top of the agenda, Matt, it's what we've been doing at Charlie's recommendation is that the governor's the current status of COVID and the governor's stance on that is allowing us to make the call ourselves as to whether we deem it safe and feasible and all of that.
Correct. Correct. And I'm not questioning that, but it does require a suspension of our rules in order to meet exclusively remotely. That's the way we've been handling it on all city committees. And so I'm assuming that's what we should be doing as well.
Charlie, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, that's not the way we've been handling it. The president of the board has been making the determination beforehand on whether it would be impractical or imprudent to continue the hearing, to have the hearing in person. So we're having it electronically. If at the meeting, the board votes to have it in person or to have the next meeting in person, then that's what we would do. But we've never voted on that. People, I think, have taken the position that they're fine with
I don't think
determination.
I don't think it's necessarily a question of questioning the chairman. I think it's just literally getting ducks in a row and making sure that no one can come and say, hey, the board never voted to have this meeting exclusively remotely. So that's the only reason I was questioning that, because like I said, I've been following the advice of city attorneys and dealing with city commissions. And so if our policy is not to follow that, that's perfectly fine, but I would be remiss if I did not raise that question.
Yeah, that's not what we've been doing. If you guys want to do that, we can, but I don't think it's necessary.
It was also my memory that when we discussed this last, we resolved that there would be some sort of a until further notice type of nature to our decision to remain remote rather than having to discuss it every time. But you know, if Matt, if you feel that I've got to say Matt R from now on, I think Matt Rogers, if you feel that that is a more comfortable way to proceed, I have no issue with that. I was just simply going on, you know, what we had talked to Charlie about last time we went over this.
Yeah, and I mean, all I would do would be to make a motion that we, you know, in light of the COVID situation in Illinois, that we suspend the rules so that we can meet exclusively remotely and not in person at this meeting.
Again, I don't think it's necessary, but you guys can certainly have that motion and do it if you want.
And if we were to do that, Charlie, from now on, that would obviously be the first order of business at every meeting then, so that it would just prepare us before anything else happens to be suspending the rules.
Well, I would think that if you're going to do it, you would suspend the rules until such time as either the disaster proclamation runs out, or you, as the president of the board, determine that it's not impractical or imprudent to continue to have a meeting in person.
Right. I think that's what we essentially did last time we went over this, is that we were suspending the rules as part of the overall picture of deciding to stay remote for the foreseeable future. So I guess I'm wondering, between Matt Rogers recommending that we make that motion and then what we've done in the past, are we feeling like we need to make that motion at the beginning of every meeting? Or Matt, are you feeling like you'd make the motion to suspend the rules for us to meet remotely, you know, until further notice, or until we say we're meeting in person again?
I don't know that you can suspend the rules across multiple meetings is my only question. But if council says that it can, and they feel comfortable with that, then I'm not going to fight this. I'm just using, like I said, the advice I've received from other attorneys, at public meetings. But, if you feel that a suspension of the rules can cross over multiple meetings, that's fine. That's not my understanding of the rules, but I will follow council's advice.
I mean, to me, this is the kind of thing where as long as somebody views it to be additionally protective for us legally to take a certain move that's as simple as, making a motion and voting on it, it's not hard to do. So, I'm fine with that, Matt. And if you want to go ahead with that motion, we can see, again, I don't think that anyone's going to have an issue with it. It may be additional to what we have to do at a minimum, but I don't view it to be problematic.
If that's the case, then I would move that in light of the governor's COVID-19 disaster proclamation, that we suspend our rules to allow for board members and the public to participate in this meeting remotely over the Zoom platform.
Is there a second?
think-
Debbie, I see you talking and it doesn't say you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Mick Morrell seconds.
And I heard you say, so maybe it's fine now. Can you say
Hello?
something?
Did you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, now we heard you, but,
Sorry.
Julie,
Okay.
you can record Mick as the second there.
That's okay. Mick can have it. Don't say I never gave you anything, Mick.
And Julie, hello, if you would, please roll call the vote on that motion.
Sure. Braun,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Morel. Mick, Morel,
Yes.
thank you. Rogers
Yes.
and Gaines.
Yes. Okay, so getting back to the agenda, as I said, we're in the citizen comments section on the appropriation ordinance and levy that is supposed to be held between 7:15 and 7:30. Seeing as we do not have any citizens present for citizen comment, neither now nor 9 minutes ago when we called the meeting to order. Charlie, remind me, do we hold this space regardless, or do we go into the meeting?
Good question.
I think we gotta wait till 7:30 because
We
it's
do.
a fun one.
Yeah, we always wait.
I'm sorry, I was muted. We hold the space till 7:30 so that anybody who shows up late can speak to the issues if they show up. I don't think there's anything wrong with discussing things as long as there's no vote on stuff that may come up on the agenda.
In other words, you're saying that we would go ahead and hear from citizens if and when they show up, and yet we can continue discussing our agenda as well?
Yes, you can continue discussing the agenda. We can't really vote on issues. So I think if you were to have parts of the agenda that are non-controversial, just acknowledging certain things are happening on certain dates, or maybe somebody passed away or something like that, that's kind of stuff you can talk about now.
Okay. So yeah, the minutes, the bills, the petty cash, that all requires votes. Monthly reports we could go into?
Hey, Martha, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Could I briefly go over the appropriation ordinance with some minor changes that were made? So,
Oh, that's a good idea.
Talk budget?
Yeah, that's great. And also, to Charlie's suggestion that we talk about other things, I do notice that on the agenda, we adjourn the public hearing and then we call the regular meeting to order. So it's probably proper to stay in this public hearing until 7:30. But it makes sense to me that Brian could talk about the appropriation ordinance and levy, since that's what the public hearing is about. So, yeah, Brian,
Okay.
if you want the floor.
Okay, so from the tentative budget, to the appropriation ordinance, which you have in front of you in hard copy. We made some minor changes. R23 program supplies, I think we increased a little bit. R37 maintenance wages, we added overtime, we added $3,000. C51, we added indoor art, $1,000. Capital improvements, the Vanden Haven Fund, we went from 10,000 to 12,000 because we had a lot of tree work already done in July and August. And then therefore on Exhibit A, we are using some reserve funds in IMRF, $5,000. And in liability, we're using $10,000 to bring those funds excess revenues down. So the total appropriation from the tentative budget that I suggested in June was $717,600. And now the appropriation ordinance is, with using some excess funds, suggested to be $700,000, I believe, $500. So it's a budget that'll work. It's a budget we discussed all the major items on before, and it is less than the tentative from 2 months ago. That's it in a nutshell.
And I would just add to that the actual appropriation is 966,500. It's the resulting property levy that's the 700,500 that Brian mentioned, with the gap being filled from unexpended funds on hand, as well as program revenues and other miscellaneous revenue sources.
So Brian or Jerry, if you know, do we have an ordinance? Does somebody have an ordinance that's prepared with these new numbers in it?
The ordinance that was distributed has the numbers he's referencing.
Yeah.
Okay,
What he's saying is since the August meeting.
I understand now.
Yeah.
I thought it was more recent.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, which we will, once this is approved, we will get it signed. Martha has to come in and sign it. And then we'll get it to you by the 16th. How would you like me to get it to you? Drop it off?
So you can now send it to me by PDF because I'm now able to electronically file.
Okay. That's what we will do.
Thanks for the update on those things, Brian and Jerry. Does anybody else have any questions on that?
I might add to it a little bit. Exhibit A is a document that we spent we always do, but at our working session that we had in late August to finalize all the figures, we brought Exhibit A into balance and worked through all the numbers. And the format of Exhibit A doesn't make it completely transparently clear how some of this funding is happening, with particular reference to the unexpended funds on hand to be applied to appropriations. We're showing that 37,000 is going to be drawn upon in the capital improvement fund. We don't actually have the 37,000 there. A portion of that is Vanden Haven, and yes, that's there. The remainder will be a transfer from unexpended funds out of the general fund in the amount of 25,000. So 12,000 from Vanden Haven and 25,000 from the corporate fund.
So I think we're at 7:30 now, so I think we can adjourn the public meeting if you'd like, and then start the 7:30 meeting.
That's right. And I think as usual, we need a motion, a second, and a vote to adjourn. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing section at 7:31.
I move that we adjourn the public hearing for the appropriation ordinance.
And Matt, let me just remind you or let you know, because I don't know if city council is doing this, but one thing we're doing as a practice in the context of meeting virtually is that we announce ourselves with every motion or second, just so that if somebody, Julie, for instance, when she's doing the minutes, or if there were any issues with our video transmission, so that if somebody could only hear our voice, that there's just that double layer of making it clear who's speaking. So we just try to
Mitchell
say,
seconds.
you know, I'm sorry?
Mitchell seconds.
Okay. Roll call vote. Braun,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
and Gaines.
Yes. So it's 7:32 and I'll call the regular meeting to order. This would be the citizen comments section, and if anyone is here, I'm looking at the people in attendance. I don't see anyone who would be a citizen for citizen comment, but if anyone's listening, now is the chance to speak. And I assume Natalie would tell me if we got anything in advance, as usual. All right, I don't think we have anybody here for citizen comment. So we'll move into approval of the minutes from the August 12th, 2021 meeting. Does somebody want to move to approve those minutes?
I think Debbie is talking again and not being recorded.
I don't understand it. Can you hear me now?
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
Okay, this is Braun, and I was going to make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 12th, 2021.
Mitchell seconds.
I have a quick correction because it's my name. I will not correct the actual minutes in any way, but my name Matthew is spelled with one T, Mathew. And so it is incorrectly spelled in the citizens for who was present at the meeting and also in motion number 2, my appointment. So it just to be Mathew, but you also can, in future minutes, can just refer to me as Matt, M-A-T-T.
Thank you, Matt. Sorry about that.
Nope, not a problem. Happens all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Any other comments from anybody? All right, I think Julie, you can roll call the vote of approval on the minutes for us, please.
Braun,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
I will abstain since I was not a member yet.
and Gaines.
Yes. Moving on to the approval of the bills, and I'll turn it over to Brian to speak on those.
Okay, I'll go over the unusuals on the bills. Auto wares, we needed a battery and some filters for the F-250. Chase payments is high. That's because a lot of online registration for August and September programs. As we go further down, Catherine Egan is our garden instructor, and those are some supplies she needed. Further down, Jim Iorio is a refund. Martha Klitsky, refund. Celine Kraft, refund. Language and Actions is a partner class. Further down, Oakton Tires, F-250 got new tires, getting ready for the winter. Quill is a bookcase and a cabinet storage, a cabinet for storage. Ridgeville Foundation is their 18 teams that registered at $50 a team goes to the foundation, so that's $900. Abby Schumacher, some supplies for the Garden to Table program. Jill Van Buren, refund. And Verizon Wireless may look high, but that's 2 phones. And that's it.
Okay, this is Ron, and I'll make a motion that we accept the bills in the total of 17,259.68.
Mitchell seconds.
Any other questions from anybody for Brian? Brian, I had a question about the tires. How often are you replacing tires on the truck?
They were bald. We actually got stuck in the winter several times. I couldn't tell you, but it's been years, 3-4 years at least.
Okay. And the Citgo charge of $733, it says gas for the truck and equipment. And then it also says July in the expanded section. Is that, I mean, that just, obviously that's not just gas. If it were just gas, that would be really high, it seems
No,
like, but
That Citgo is for August. That's the August bill.
oh, okay,
fuel-
it says July in the notes.
Well, the receipts may go back into July, yes. So, but that's the updated bill that we paid. So it's July, August, actually.
Okay. And that includes equipment as well. It's not just gas.
There's no, yeah, but there's no equipment on it. That's all gas.
Okay.
Well, that's all fuel. We cut grass 4 days a week and 3 vehicles.
Anybody else? Questions? And if there are none, Julie, if you wouldn't mind roll calling the vote.
Braun,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Gaines.
Yes. Moving on to petty cash, and I'll turn it over to you again, Brian.
Okay, Amazon is sign holders and soap dispenser. Apple is iPad storage for 2 iPads. Cochina Azteca was the last farmer's market. We bought the staff dinner. Natalie wasn't there, but we got our dinner later on me. Illinois State Police, background checks. Jewel Osco, last day of camp. I believe that was beverages. MailChimp, emails over 2,000. Pizza Hut, last day of camp for the counselors. That's pizza. Soul and Smoke, that was the city concert at Cayman East. Bought the crew dinner as they worked through 7 a.m. through about 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m. And then the post office was stamps as the stamp machine was being reloaded electronically. And Zoom is for the meetings that we've had throughout the month.
Is there a motion to approve the bills or the petty cash, sorry, for September?
Rogers moves to accept the petty cash summary and approve it.
And is there a second?
I'll second. Ron, I'll second it.
Any?
Could we have the
questions?
dollar amount specified, please?
Yes, for $511.42.
Any questions or discussion on that before we roll call the vote? All right, Julie, I think we can turn it to you.
Braun,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
and Gaines.
Yes. All right, moving on to monthly reports. And we'll go with yours first, Brian, please.
Okay, I'm going to skip most of the first paragraph because we've already done it regarding the 7:15 start. But I do want to mention that on Friday, August 27th, 2021, Jerry Gibbs, Natalie Salee, Martha Gaines, Matt Rogers, and I reviewed the tentative budget line item by line item, made adjustments, which you've already heard about. I want to thank all of those folks, but especially Jerry Gibbs. His insight into the Cook County formulas is quite helpful to the financial health of the Park District. And without him, we would probably under budget or over budget and waste money in one way or another. So thanks to Jerry. In the past month, Jung Yu Hauser has taken over as accounts manager position and is doing a fine job. In fact, beyond fine, she's doing really, really nice job. Jerry Gibbs and Abby Lavelle were most helpful in making Jung comfortable in her duties through her training session. In the past month, we've had several special events that included 2 movies in our parks, one on August 28th in Cayman East, one on September 4th in Elks Park. We also had a concert in Cayman East on August 23rd. Those were in conjunction with the city of Evanston. We completed the farmers market and concert series at Ridgeville Park. I believe it was the 28th or 9th. Natalie Salee and the maintenance crew did a great job throughout the summer getting the farmers market set up and the concert stage and everything that goes into that. Fall adult classes began August 29th. AYSO will begin its youth soccer fall session on Sunday, September 12th. It will run through November 7th. Soccer games will take place at Cayman East, West, and Leiter Parks from noon to 6 p.m. Finally, Bike the Ridge will take place on September 26th from 9 a.m. to 1. School of Rock will perform. I believe they're starting at 10, not 10:30. But we'll wake up the neighborhood in one way or another. It's always a good time, so come on out. That's it.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on to Jerry's report.
Okay. No, in terms of notable activity, we still have not received any tax revenues yet this fiscal year due to the delay in the tax bills going out. That means we've run down our cash balances so low in the operating accounts that we risk being overdrawn. I had to transfer another $100,000 from our U.S. bank relationship to the operating cash accounts at Chase. That means to date this fiscal year, we've had to transfer $200,000. It's possible looking ahead at the calendar that we may need about another $50,000 in the next few weeks if we don't start receiving tax receipts by the end of September. Just something to keep an eye on. With the monthly reports, they're all as of June 30th. These are the finalized set of reports, and they have been provided to the auditors who are coming in next week to begin their process for creating the certified annual financial report. In the final set of figures, the key talking points are that overall, our actual expenditures were about $21,000 below the plan. By fund, the general fund expenditures were roughly $9,700 below plan. All the other funds were under budget by less than $4,000 each. Looking at the line items within each fund, generally any maintenance and capital expenditure line items exceeded the plan, while the wages and salaries were below budget. That's because we weren't running programs, paying staff, doing things, and instead redirected the funding to capital. That was the nature of the flexibility we built into the budget last year. On the revenue side of the equation, our revenues came in almost $42,000 below plan. Of that, $20,000 was in program revenue, and it would appear tax revenues were about $21,000 below plan, and interest revenue was below plan by $2,200. The property tax comparison is a little misleading because of how the timing and collection process works. Another way of looking at it that's perhaps a bit more accurate suggests our shortfall was closer to $24,000 below the anticipated level of tax revenue. When we built the budget last year, projecting the program revenue was challenging because we didn't know what programs would be operating or not. And so we planned for a pretty steep decline in revenue. So we planned for $120,000 in revenue instead of the prior year's $180,000. Our actual revenues came in even lower, which is why we had the $20,000 shortfall on the revenue side. But in a bit of good news, our replacement taxes exceeded the plan by about $7,000, which is very unusual. And it's all the more unusual because the replacement taxes were supposed to be phased out in the years leading up to 2024, according to a law that was passed in 2019. But in 2021, a new law was passed repealing the phase out of the replacement taxes. But I'm not quite sure I understand why that would mean we got more replacement tax revenue than we typically do, but we're happy to take the money. Just kind of as an aside, informational, what we call the replacement tax is also known by some as the Illinois franchise tax. Neither name really does the tax justice. Its replacement name comes from the fact that back in 1970, the new state constitution at that time eliminated personal property tax. And so this new tax, the replacement tax, was created to aid agencies such as Ridgeville Park District that relied on replacement tax revenue. So it's not a big number in our budget. It's nothing we can ever control or kind of predict, but it just interesting little side note there, what was going on with that. Overall net, our revenue less our appropriations ended up being negative $142,000 for the year against our plan of $121,000. What that really means is that we've reduced our fund balances by about $21,000 more than we planned for. Ordinarily, this would be a pretty serious concern, but given all the variables and impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think we're pretty comfortably positioned to cope with the shortfall. We aren't going to need to cut staff or programs or defer any capital improvement projects. The shortfall was due more to the fact that revenues came in below plan rather than our expenditures having exceeded the plan. In terms of our assets and liabilities, our totals declined by about $92,000 in the month to month from May to June. Compared to the beginning of the fiscal year, the decline for the whole year was $61,000. Most changes were on the liability fund balance half of the equation. Specifically, the shift month to month that's normal is that from May, accounts payable increased from almost zero to $127,000. It's typical at year end that we have a lot of accounts payable due to the timing of year end accruals and payments. But this year, that figure was about double what it normally is. And that was due to the big capital improvement projects that we were working with at the time and the timing of when they were getting paid for and done. Overall, fund balances declined by nearly $200,000 from May to June, but relative to the beginning of the fiscal year, the balances were down about $150,000. The bank balances declined by roughly $101,000 between the end of May and the end of June, and compared to the beginning of the fiscal year, they're down about $75,000. At present, we have no banking relationships that are in excess of the FDIC insurance. So we're in compliance there on public funds. That's it. That's our financial status.
I have a quick question, and it's just because I'm sort of new to this.
Yep.
So the delay in tax revenues, what causes that? How does that, is that just the state processing things and returning the money back to us, or?
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware, but in July and August of this year, there was a dispute between the Cook County assessor and the Cook County treasurer over the, basically the reliability of some senior freeze exemptions as a result of an in-depth reporting story that the Sun-Times did. That dispute caused the tax bills to go out very late. Initially, it was blamed on the state being late, giving the equalization factor to the county to work with. But in reality, it was more that whole issue over the dispute between the assessor and the treasurer, and until I think a judge ultimately got involved to say, get the bills out. So the point is, those bills would have normally gone out around the beginning of July with payments starting to come in August. Those bills did not go out until late August with a due date of October 1st. Okay. We're seeing a couple months delay. that's a, big chunk of money for us, because that's going to
Right,
be
yeah, I
something in
just
the
was
vicinity of
curious.
$350,000.
I was just kind of curious whether this was a one-time thing, if this is kind of a habitual thing, or,
It's, the first installment is usually fairly predictable because it's not contingent on the same kind of variables. This second installment, there's a variety of things that can go wrong at the state and the county level that can cause them to be delayed. We've been pretty reliable the last several years, but it's not unheard of for there to be problems in the state legislature where they've been delayed as late as like November.
Right.
But it's been a long time since we faced that. And,
okay, thank you.
mhm.
Yeah, there's been a good run for about 15 years now, getting it out timely.
Thanks, Jerry. Anybody else have any questions for Jerry? Alrighty, moving on to Natalie Salih's report.
Hi, thank you. Summer wrap up. We hosted our partner camps the first 3 weeks of August. The Imaginary Game was at Ridgeville. Playwell Technologies was at Cayman East. And as I mentioned last month, both of those camps, for the most part, sold out, which was great. The Farmers Market and Concerts on the Ridge finished up on August 25th. It was a very successful market and concert season. Ended the concert season with the Ridgeville Band, which was awesome. It was a really good day. And then thanks to Ruben, Marcos, and V for getting the buildings all cleaned up and put back together so we could start our fall programming. They did a really nice job. Studio 908 adult classes began on August 29th, and the youth classes begin next week, September 12th. Partner classes with Grupo Axe Capoeira, Language in Action, Upbeat Feet with Miss Mac, and the Imaginary Game also begin in September. Registration is looking okay, but definitely not as full as I'd like to see it. I'm going to leave registration open for all the sessions for a while, so I can prorate the fee if people want to join late. So offering scholarships, sending lots of emails and things and reminders out to folks. So trying to fill out those classes as much as possible, safely, of course. And yeah, and that's it. Thank you all for always sharing my Facebook posts. I appreciate that. Park art ribbon cutting. We're going to be hosting a ribbon cutting event with our partner Art Encounter and the artist Sherry Lee Charlton on September 19th from 3 to 3:30. Sherry's going to talk about the inspiration behind all of our mural and bench art at Ridgeville Park. And I hope that you'll all come join us for that. I think the board from Art Encounter is going to come as well. So it'll be a great photo op. We'll take lots of pictures and share that on social media as well. Bike the Ridge, our annual partner event with the city of Evanston, is scheduled for September 26th from 9 to 1. We'll once again be hosting info booths, a raffle from the Ridgeville Foundation, and a live performance from the School of Rock at Ridgeville Park. And then finally, thank you. I just wanted to thank the board for giving all of us, but me especially, an opportunity to work with Dr. Effiam the past couple of years. She was very special to me. I just wrote a little note here. It said the community lost an incredible human this past weekend, and I know I'm not alone in mourning her. I just want to take a moment to thank the board for choosing Dr. Patricia Effiam as our equity consultant 2 years ago, giving me an opportunity to work closely with her. Pat was an important mentor to me and to all of us at Ridgeville Park District. Her positivity and encouraging attitude towards equity work will always inspire me. We were lucky to know her, learn from her, and call her a friend. So thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This question may have been for Brian. I'm sorry. I don't know. I wanted to know what the status is on the horseshoe business. Maybe I missed it, but I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, we haven't done anything. A couple months ago, I don't know if you were in the board meeting, we briefly discussed the horseshoe pit, and it's been delayed because the nature-based play area might go to Elks Park, and we don't want to put the horseshoe pit in and then have to move it or have it near kids. So we have to plan a little bit. So it's actually going to be delayed for a while till we figure out the nature-based play area where that's going to go. So again, I didn't want to put it in and then have to move it
I understand.
or be dangerous.
The other thing, I get that. No, I appreciate that. The other thing is what's happening with the McCourt Park tot lot?
He would not, I'm going to be brutally honest, he would not want the park to be named after him, but a bench and a tree to go in and dedicate the bench to somebody other than him. That's our last discussion. And
I just, go ahead.
And he asked me to let him talk to you and his daughter.
Well, he never talked to me,
Yeah.
and I doubt he talked to Colin. And I just wanted to say that, Brian, we talked about this, and that Colin specifically said, do not tell my father.
He sniffed it out. It's in the minutes. It's everywhere.
Well,
And this, I had the discussion with him. Here was a quote: "You name parks after dead people. I'm still here kicking." So
okay.
I think you, me, and him need to have a discussion and punch it
Oh,
out.
I'm calling him tonight. Don't worry.
Okay. That's great.
No, I mean, if he doesn't, he doesn't. But
Yeah.
I just wondered why I never heard more about it.
He said he would talk to you, and that's where we left it. So I think you, me, and him should meet in the park and punch it out.
You punch him out.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna,
Nobody punch anybody.
yeah.
You all can work that out.
Let us love you, Pat.
I also just wanted to say that Pat's funeral will be a week from Saturday at First Church on Simpson. And the viewing is at 10 and the funeral will be at 11.
What church is
Thank
that?
you.
I don't know if that's the name of it. Her husband I talked to him today and he said First Church on Simpson. I don't know. I was going to take a ride over there and see if I could find it.
It's I believe the one that's just west of Ridge, or I'm sorry, of Green Bay Road up there. It's like a block in.
Like hidden kind of.
It's a
pretty big
Walgreens
church right on the corner across from the park, south
Right.
of the Walgreens.
Church. Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you for mentioning that, Debbie. I know I mentioned it in an email today, but once the details are posted online, like officially, publicly, I guess, I will share that with the community and also just a statement from us regarding Pat's passing. I'm just waiting on that information to share. So
Okay.
I'll get that out.
It's at Simpson and Ashland.
Simpson and Ashland. Thanks.
That's by Fleetwood Jourdain, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right across Ashland to the east of the Jourdain fields
Field.
there at Simpson.
Yep.
Okay, thank you again, Natalie. And we are, unless anyone else has any questions, issues for Natalie, we are moving on to the update from the monthly report from the Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, and we'll hear from J.C. Herman.
Hi there. I would also like to start out by acknowledging Dr. Effiam. She was our committee's first consultant and the person responsible for laying the foundation for our equity work. Dr. Effiam's passing is a great loss to our community. She came to Ridgeville at a time when we truly needed her help and her guidance, and she helped us to examine ourselves and our institution while also empowering us to see the bigger picture and the impact that we have the opportunity to make. She dedicated her life and her career to bettering life for others, and we hope to continue her legacy as we move forward in our work towards a more equitable park district. I'm so grateful that we had an opportunity to work with her, and she really set us up for a lot of success. That being said, one of the items for action on the agenda today is our recommendation, the recommendation from the Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, that the Park District sign the Stronger Together petition, vocalizing support for District 65's anti-racist curriculum, and attaching the following statement that was so eloquently written by our committee member, Elaine Siegel. Evanston's Ridgeville Park District serves our neighborhoods as a community hub. Our shared green spaces and creative programming engage us in play, work, and study, togetherness and growth. Ridgeville offers unity to our community. As our sense of community deepens, we come to recognize that despite our commonality, there is difference. We have a lot to learn about each other. We increasingly acknowledge deep-seated divisions, inequities and injustices, harms to overcome and to heal, personal change to embrace, community practices to rethink, and priorities to realign. It is a transformative process, calling on us to create and celebrate change and to come together in new ways. Here at Ridgeville, such change is grounded in the daily rhythms of our many activities we create and share. Our Evanston Elementary School District, number 65, is responding to these strivings for change through its thoughtful equity work. The DMAR lawsuit erroneously portrays this work, which strives to sensitize us to prejudice and bias and to develop meaningful response actions, as a form of unlawful discrimination. We object to this mischaracterization of the facts and the law. We strongly support all that the dedicated educators of our Lighthouse District are contributing to our community, and we strive to develop and to realize our common vision. So as the Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, we're hoping that you all will choose to sign on to that petition and hopefully include the statement that Elaine wrote for all of us.
JC, before you move on to point B of, or point 2, would you like us to vote on that right now?
I think that makes the most sense if that's what the board feels like works.
Sure. So I'll make a motion to approve the statement given to us by the Ready Committee and attach that to our signing on to the Stronger Together petition online.
I'll second that. Debbie Braun, I'll second that.
And Julie, if you would roll call everybody for us.
Ron,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
and Gaines.
Yes.
Thank you. That brings me to our interviews and our recommendation for an equity consultant. I do want to start off by saying we interviewed some really fantastic consultants. I was really impressed by the caliber of people that came our way. Just as a reminder, and we talked a little bit about this at my last board report. So the process essentially was Natalie contacted some potential candidates. Some candidates let us know that what we were looking for is not exactly what they, the kind of work that they do. We landed on 4 different consultants, all of who we interviewed in our public meetings. It was a really tough decision to make. We had some really thoughtful conversations. But after all of that, we feel very strongly that Dr. Logan is the best fit for what we're looking for in terms of work on the committee. And we recommend that the board choose to hire Dr. Logan for our consultant as the Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee.
So I'll make a motion to Charlie, can you help me out here? If we are accepting the Ready Committee's recommendation that we hire Dr. Logan for a position we've already budgeted for, is there any specific wording of how we as a board approve that recommendation from the committee?
So do we have a contract pending with him?
We don't. So we were, everybody should have received some written information about Dr. Logan. And then I was gonna see after a motion is made in a second, if anyone wants to ask any questions or if there's gonna be any discussion. But I'm wondering about the motion itself and the vote. Is this something that,
Are we
What's the-
expecting him to do anything within the next month?
if possible, yes, we are looking to get started with him as soon as possible.
But we don't have a set contract. We expect him to do X, Y, and Z at this rate, et cetera.
Right. We don't. I mean, we do already have the finances pretty much worked out because that was part of the initial discussion with him about what our budget was in the first place. We also have verbally gone over a lot of the details and also generally what it is we'll be working with him on. But it's definitely the next step to have a contract with him. I just don't know at what
Yeah,
point in time it makes the most sense to
I
have.
I think that we should approve a contract for up to a certain dollar amount, which is probably what we've budgeted, but it could be less. And then we can move forward with him, and Brian would be authorized to execute the contract at that point.
Okay, given that we already know that the budget specified for the equity consultant is $10,000, we do know that when the contract exists, it will include that as the dollar amount. But the details of what it is that he's going to be doing with us and for us in exchange for the $10,000, that's the part that still has to get created. What steps, if any, do you think we need to take tonight as a board in order to move forward with a contract?
I think that you just decide, you just need a motion that says you're going to move forward with him up to, and, you know, contract for up to a certain dollar amount, which would be the budgeted amount, and work it out with him on what he's going to do. And Brian is then authorized to execute the contract on behalf of the Park District.
Okay, great. And do I need to sign that contract too as president, or is that something that Brian handles?
No,
Okay.
Brian can do that.
Okay, so I think I will make the motion that the board approves moving forward with Dr. Logan in a contract for equity work to include up to $10,000 out of our budget from the fiscal year 2021, 2022. Is that sufficient in terms of the wording for that motion?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what the language was, but it
I
sounded
think-
pretty close.
Okay, and I don't know, Julie, if I included this part, but I'm trying to accept, you know, the board will be voting on accepting the recommendation from the Ready Committee. For
Yes, the board is moving, you want the motion to say, the board is approving the recommendation to enter into a contract with, and I'm sorry, I don't have his name in front of me, with
Dr.
him.
Gilo Logan.
And, you know, the Park District is authorized to enter into a contract with him for the equity services up to $10,000, period. If that's seconded and it's approved, we can move forward with that. If anything unusual comes up in the contracting, it should come back to the board.
Okay, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I can't parrot back exactly what you said just now either, but Julie, in terms of the minutes, that the way that Charlie worded the motion is.
Yeah, I have Gaines moved to approve the recommendation from the Ready Committee to form a contract with Dr. Logan for equity work up to $10,000 for fiscal year 2021-22.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Mhm.
And is there a second?
Mitchell, second.
Great, and Julie, if you'll roll call the vote on that one.
Actually,
Discussion?
we need to have discussion.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Does anyone have any questions or discussion issues?
So I'll go ahead and just, I feel a little uncomfortable accepting someone whose information I received less than 24 hours ago. I would like to research this person. I also feel uncomfortable that we are just saying that we're giving $10,000 for equity work without outlining what we are expecting in return for that $10,000. So I'm very uncomfortable voting on this at this particular moment. I don't know how other commissioners feel about that, but I just don't feel comfortable without having all the information before me to vote for this.
So Matt, that's very fair. And that was a concern of ours actually, in terms of the timing with which we put this before the board. I just, to speak back to that, I just want to say that we conducted interviews with 4
different people.
4 different people on 2 different occasions in order to line up everybody's schedules. So I think it was just 1 interview one of those times, and then 3 on a separate occasion. We were hoping and planning to make a decision as a committee about whose interview we liked the best, which direction we wanted to go, who we wanted to hire. And we ultimately felt that we wanted to hear from one of those people again. So we scheduled another meeting, talked to them more, came up with actually some new ideas, but ultimately in the realm of hiring an equity consultant, decided on Dr. Logan. So we were already kind of behind schedule at that point. It's important to us, given that this fiscal year started July 1st and we don't have an equity consultant yet here in time for the September meeting. It was our goal that we would try to move as quickly as possible, get board approval on this in order to start with Dr. Logan as soon as possible, instead of waiting an entire, month more before we can get board approval on moving forward with him. So that is why we scrambled to kind of put together physical paperwork about, everything that he has ready to go in terms of previous work and who he is and all of that. The paperwork for the actual work we'll do with him absolutely will be forthcoming. And I understand the viewpoint of wanting to see it before approving it. I will say, just because Matt Rogers, you are new to the board, I will fill you in on the fact that 2 years ago, when we first started doing equity work, the method by which we selected our equity consultant consisted of soliciting proposals in writing from individuals and from companies, and also meeting with them in the board meeting, because we didn't have a committee to focus on this work yet at that time. So the board was privy to all of those people, hearing from them, and also having in their hands the written proposals. We didn't intentionally decide to not have a written proposal component this time. It's more that we already had a committee to focus on this work. We scheduled these interviews, we had discussions. So a lot of this took place. It just didn't take place in a way that the board was privy to. And again, in an ideal world, we would have given more notice, but if at any point it's included in a board packet and it's not voted on, it's already another month before we're able to move on these things if we don't vote on it at the same time that the recommendation is made. So that's all I have to say at the moment. I don't know if JC wants to chime in with anything additional to where we're coming from right now.
I do. So Matt, just to give you an idea of what we're looking for, either Dr. Logan or any consultant to work with the equity committee, it's essentially picking up where Dr. Effiam left off. The board several months ago did approve an equity lens, which we have not been trained on using. There is a general consensus in the world of equity work that there should be, regular trainings, especially for new board members, so that the whole board is working from an anti-racist perspective. So there would be training involved. There would be evaluations to see, what we've done so far, where the Park District is standing in terms of their, role in the community and all of that. And we are also looking to have a consultant help us look at our charter, policies and procedures, any other documents that govern how the Park District is running, to make sure that when the equity committee switches over or when the board switches over, that whoever else comes into Ridgeville is coming into a foundation that is working from an equitable standpoint from the ground up, from the inside out. Also, Matt, if you're interested, I would be more than willing to meet with you to let you know a little bit more of what the committee has done over these last few years. I don't want to take, a whole ton of board time to talk about what we have accomplished and what we're still looking to do in terms of, our short and long-term plans. But that's a bit of a synopsis of what we're looking for the assistance for a consultant.
Yeah, Debbie?
Well, I'd like to say something. I'm not new on the board and I'm very uncomfortable with this. And few of the reasons are, I'd like to know what exactly we're expecting of this person. I mean, we don't know. Does he know? I'd like to see it in writing. I'd like to see, have we called any of his places that he was before? I'd like to talk to people. I've heard his name a lot over the past few years. I'd like to talk to some people at the police where he worked, at the fire, with the firemen. I'd like to talk to some councilmen. I am not comfortable with voting on this tonight. And it concerns me a little bit, if I'm hearing correctly, that the attitude is kind of, we got to get this going. So we'll just say, okay, we're going to pay this $10,000 and we'll come up with the contract later. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not 100% sold that he's the right one. I don't know the other people that you interviewed, but I do remember interviewing him whenever it was before. And I have a lot of questions that aren't being answered. So if we're going to vote on this tonight, I would have to vote no.
No, I would strongly encourage, all of our meetings are public. I think it can be really helpful to have additional board members attending our meetings as, citizens. All of these interviews also took place publicly. The recordings are also on YouTube. All of that information possibly could have been gathered at this point. We have been working diligently to try to have this happen because, as you know, Debbie, as someone who's been on the committee, we've been without leadership for several months now. And as we have expressed over and over, we really are looking to continue our work and not just sit idly as a committee. I don't want to push anything through without people feeling comfortable. I do want to make sure that Dr. Logan is the appropriate person and it's not a decision that gets made within the committee. But I would also appreciate some real attention to this issue and to have this not be something that's just going to sit idle.
I would also just like to say that I understand what you're saying, but I am not convinced that we need to just do this because we quick have to have somebody there. And that's why I'm uncomfortable with it. And yes, we have gone several months without leadership. And I'm just not convinced that he's the one. So that's just my opinion. And again, if I have to vote tonight on him, it would be no, not because I don't think he's qualified or whatever, just because I got this morning, yesterday, I think I got it emailed, but it was Rosh Hashanah. I did nothing to do with Ridgeville yesterday. And I just feel like this is being I'm just not comfortable with it.
Matt?
Can we hear some about the scope of work and expectations of Dr. Logan and what the committee is asking for?
So we are looking to, like I said, Pat set us up with this excellent foundation. Unfortunately, because of circumstances, we were not able to accomplish as much as we had hoped in that time span. We have this equity lens. We do not have any training on how to use it. Dr. Effiam made recommendations in terms of changes that should be made in policy procedure. That hasn't been done yet. And we as a committee do not feel confident that we have the skill or the knowledge to make those changes on our own. But we do feel very strongly, especially because of Dr. Effiam's recommendations, that that verbiage and those ordinances do get addressed. And to be honest, even to the point of making sure that language is clear, and I think the barbecue policy is a really good example of that. that when things are unclear, it can be misconstrued in the community. And we feel that it's really important that all that language be very clear so that whoever is coming to the Park District has a very, very clear understanding of what we're allowing, what we're not allowing, and what those processes are. So that's a good chunk of what we are hoping a consultant will do. We also acknowledge that both as a committee and we feel that as a board, that we would all benefit from not only another round of training, but having evaluations in place, yearly evaluations, other evaluations along the way to really make sure that we are doing what we're saying we're doing. And again, hopefully at some point the committee will be well-informed enough and, large enough and experienced enough to take this work on without a consultant. But at this point, we absolutely do not have that expertise.
I have another question.
Mhm.
What scoring method was used? How did you guys decide that he was the top?
Well, we had discussions in executive session. We had a string of questions that we had come up with as a committee. And we really tried to focus on what we thought was the most important things, right? There's a lot of work that we have to do and we can't do it all in the next year. So we chose the person that we thought would be the most attentive and the most methodical and the most experienced in terms of rewriting these policies. That's really the driving force of what this next chunk of decisions is. The training for the committee and the board and the rewriting of the policies and procedures.
So do we see anything of how people felt about each candidate? I mean, I don't even know what we're comparing him to.
All of the interviews have been recorded. So you have access to all the information that we had in terms of making a decision.
Okay, well, then for sure, I haven't had a chance to look at that. So I would definitely not want to vote on this tonight.
It sounds like that at least two commissioners are not comfortable voting on this without more explicit detail of what the work that we plan to do with Dr. Logan. I can understand where they're coming from. And so in my opinion, I don't even think that we need to hear from the remaining commissioner unless he wants to chime in, because even if he were ready to vote, I think it's disrespectful at this point to overlook the concerns from the two commissioners who have spoken already. As I said, it was never our intention to be lacking in information that was given to the board. It's more of a timing issue than anything else. We did interview Dr. Logan, as somebody mentioned, 2 years ago. So a lot of us who were around back then and part of this process and still are now felt like we were not only hearing from him in this current context and this current interview, but had a frame of reference for the discussions we had with him dating back 2 years as well, and have of course heard of him, in local news in various ways since then. So in some ways we felt like we knew him. And we were, as JC already said, able to have extensive discussion in executive session. I think twice, right, JC? I mean, we went into executive session twice and went over time as usual, talking about all of this. So nothing was rushed on our behalf in terms of arriving at the decision that we arrived at as a committee. And yet it may be perceived as a rushed decision on behalf of the board, given that we aren't able to give you something in writing at this point in time in the form of the contract that we would have with him. I will remind the board that we have already budgeted this money for an equity consultant, so there's nothing new about that part. I will also remind the board that we formed this committee so that the entire board did not have to undergo the lengthy discussions and work in a monthly board meeting way, and instead the committee, comprised of originally 2 board members and now down to 1 because you did step off the board or off the committee, Debbie. So when you talk about not having been privy to more information and wanting to know what we talked about and how we arrived at this decision and what the interviews were like and all of that. I mean, that's content that, as JC said, is publicly available, and you can, and I hope you do, tune into that to get that information for yourself. But this was also a body of individuals doing important work that you were once on and you chose to step down. So I'm a little bit confused why you have such extensive questions for us when you could have been a part of this decision-making process. You were supposed to be.
I will tell you why I do. Yes, the money's been budgeted. I believe it's $10,000. That's a lot of money. I'm not willing just to say, well, we need to do this quickly, and he was the best that came, so we're going to do it. And that's the message I'm getting, was that we just don't want to wait. We needed to get it done. And you know what? I resigned from the committee for very good reasons. And I think it's kind of unfair for you to say, if you hadn't done that, you would know more. I am a board member. I'm having concerns as a board member. And I don't think it's really fair of you to say, if you hadn't resigned from the Ready Committee, you would have had all this.
So given what I've heard, it doesn't seem like there's a majority that wants to go forward tonight. So I would suggest that somebody make a motion to table this question until the next meeting.
So that's where I was going to go. Thank you. Unless Commissioner Morell wants to say something, he has not had an opportunity to speak on this, and I don't want to step on his toes.
No, thank you.
Can I say one more thing before it gets tabled? I really do request that the board members do take time to watch the interviews and to do research on the consultants as we have. Again, like Martha said, this was not a rush decision on our part by any means. We have been working hard on this for quite some time. And I just really hope that by the next meeting that time is able to be found to do the proper work to come to a conclusion that you feel very confident behind.
And I just want to say, I appreciate the work that you've done. And I'm not accusing anybody of trying to rush anything through. That's not, but the thing is, when I don't find out who the candidate is until 24 hours roughly before the meeting, that doesn't give me enough time to do my due diligence on Dr. Logan. I know he's worked with a number of people here in Evanston, some of whom I know. I would like to talk to them and find out what he's done, what his point of view is on things. Plus, I would really like to see what we are contracting him to do. So I know these are the things that we are expecting of him, and that's what should be executed under this contract. And if Absolutely. It's not, then we have to talk about why are these things not being done under the contract. Secondly, I would like to ask, I've heard discussion that a number of things were discussed in executive session, and I don't know how I have access to executive session from the Ready Committee, because I'm guessing that's not something that's up publicly anywhere. Is that a question that somebody can answer from the Ready Committee?
Yeah, I mean, the executive session, of course, as always with an executive session, would not be made public in terms of the recording. It might be a question for Natalie, because I'm pretty sure that we actually do record it. It's just that it gets edited out when the recording gets shared publicly. So as to whether that content is still accessible and viewable by the board, I actually don't know. We haven't really dealt with a request like that before.
Or even minutes from the executive session, if there are minutes from the executive session, something so we can gain some knowledge as to what was discussed there outside of a public purview, because conversations are a little more frank in executive session than they are in the public sometimes.
Are we allowed to share executive session recordings, Charles?
So my belief is, and I'm going to have to confirm it, but my belief is that they can be shared with the board members.
I mean, I would think if we're being asked to decide something that was discussed in executive session, I would hopefully have access to that.
I would hope so too, but I do want to confirm it because it's a technical area of the law, and we don't want to violate it if we can avoid it.
Correct.
I wonder also, Charlie, if it makes any sense for us to have an executive session as a board in order to discuss sort of you know, because it's my understanding executive session is for personnel stuff,
It-
hiring, firing, that kind of
Right,
stuff.
right.
So, I mean, we already had an executive session for that purpose as a committee, but if the board is feeling like they want to dig in deeper than just accepting the recommendation from the committee who exists to handle these kinds of things, and perhaps the written contract will suffice for the board, but if we need to take an additional step, I'm just thinking we could have an executive session where we can get into more detail about why we wanted to go in a certain direct, you know, choose a certain person, why we didn't want another person. That's not the kind of stuff we should be discussing in public open meetings. So something to consider perhaps for the next meeting. I just don't know if that would be, and Matt, I don't know if you have a frame of reference for this kind of stuff from what the city does. You know, would it be a standard practice to go into executive session to discuss those things? And if so, who from the Ready Committee is allowed at that executive session? Just
Well,
me, because I'm in both
And
positions?
anybody can be invited into an executive session.
Okay,
So that's totally at the board's purview as to who is invited to executive session. The issue is those people who are invited are bound by the same rules of secrecy that board members would be bound to. I don't know that we need to go to the extreme of having an executive session. I don't feel I need to have an executive session to discuss that if I have access to the Ready Committee's executive session, either by video or minutes, so I can gauge the discussion that was there. And if necessary, I can have a one-on-one conversation with you or Ms. Herman to sort of talk about any questions that come up from that. I don't know that I need to have an executive session for that. And then obviously, once we write a contract, the contract has to be approved in open session. So rather than belabor the point, unless anybody has anything else they want to say, I will go ahead and make a motion to table this. So but I don't want to step on anybody's toes if anybody has anything they want to add. Hearing none, I will move, this is Rogers, I move the action item under item number 9D2 on our agenda, the recommendation on our equity consultant for 2021-22 be tabled until our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be on October 14th. Is that correct?
I don't know the date, but I think what you're actually moving for here is to table the question, the motion that's already been seconded. That's
Yes.
the technical thing to do.
Yep.
And so if there's a second to that,
This is Braun, and I'll second that.
okay, and now we go right to roll call vote, no discussion.
Correct.
Yes,
Mitchell? Sorry, Matthew Mitchell?
Yes.
Thanks. Morel?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yes.
And Gaines?
yes. Okay.
Thank you all
thank-
so much for
thank-
the thoughtfulness.
Thank you for the update and all of that information, JC. Moving on in the agenda to old business, and this is for action, discuss and approve the 2021-2022 appropriation ordinance, and I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Okay, so I've already skimmed through the changes we made. So unless there's any other questions, I would suggest you go ahead and make a motion. But I will say this, I'm sorry, before that, is that, yes, the money for the equity consultant, when you pass this budget, is in C21. And it's been accounted for in when you make that motion in October. If you make that motion in October, the money's there.
So
Anybody have any other questions?
I- I mean, I'll go ahead and move it and then we can have discussion if there's any discussion points. So this is Rogers. I move approval of the 2021-22 appropriation ordinance as presented to us in our packet this evening. For a total amount of, and which amount do I use here? Do I use our total amount or our appropriation only amount, which is the $700,500?
The appropriation amount is the 966.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. So I would move the appropriations for $966,500.
Morel seconds.
Do folks have questions at this point?
No, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Gibbs and Mr. Rosinski for taking the time to walk through the budget line item by line item with us a couple of weeks ago. It was very helpful, especially for a new board member coming in to sort of see where money's going and how those numbers are derived at and everything else. So thank you for that.
Anybody else have anything to say or ask before we move to a vote on the motion?
Was there a second?
Mhm.
Morel.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Just want to echo what Commissioner Rogers said. Just thank you to Jerry and Brian, Natalie, and everybody, and for all their hard work on this.
All right, I think, Julie, you could please roll call the vote on that motion to approve the appropriation ordinance.
Ron? Sorry, can't hear you, Debbie.
Yes,
Yes, great. Mitchell?
Yes.
Morel?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yes.
And Gaines?
Yes. Okay, moving on in old business to discuss the procedure for board communication outside of meetings. I apologize. I meant to follow up with Brian and Natalie because I was told there are some sort of bullet points, at least, if not more than that, as to the sort of job description when it comes to corporate secretary, etc. I was interested last month in just making sure that with two brand new commissioners, well, sorry, one is brand new, one is quite new, that we are all on the same page about acting in accordance with the Open Meetings Act for communication. I'll just remind everybody, you don't hit reply all, please, when there has been communication issued to us as a board, because that is then going back to the entire board. So we're seeing a lot of that. If we could not do that, that would be preferred. But I will make a motion to table the discussion of procedure for board communication outside of meetings, more specifically until the next meeting.
I don't think you need a motion because there's no question pending. This
Okay.
is just on the agenda. We can just put it on the agenda for next month and we can save a roll call vote.
Okay, great. Moving on then to new business, discuss creating committees. And this is an item put on the agenda by Rogers. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things I would like to get feedback from the other commissioners on in particular is to look at somehow creating committees for the Park District so that we could have more in-depth discussion on issues outside of our board meeting with people in the neighborhoods, in the citizenry. So what I am looking at is something that would involve creating something like 5 committees. Each committee would have one board member who would be on it. I don't imagine they would be chairing it. I would like to find people in the community who would be willing to chair committees for us. The board members merely acting as liaisons to and from that committee so that things can be discussed and vetted more openly and not take up lots of time at the committee, or I'm sorry, at the board meetings, so that when we're getting something, we're getting a recommendation from a committee who's done their due diligence, the legwork to find out the answers, and are presenting something to us to make decisions on, as opposed to sort of something hitting us straight out of the blue in a board meeting where there's lots of questions to be vetted and things like that. So I would be very interested in doing something like that, but I would like to get the feelings of other board members as well.
I really like the idea. I do have some questions though, like how would we find these citizens? We know from past experience that they aren't knocking down the door to be involved in Ridgeville. And will this put more work on Natalie?
I mean, I think you put a thing out to people in the community and ask them, say, this is a chance for you to get involved. And if it's something where we feel that the committees can actually do something, nobody wants to serve on a board or a committee that does nothing, because it's a waste of time. But if we can find people and identify committees that make sense for us to have, and then have roles for those people to do those things, I think it benefits both the board, because things can be discussed and it's more than just our 5 voices talking to each other.
Once you do that, take into consideration that once those committees start doing things, you're going to trigger a whole bunch of responsibility issues under the Open Meetings Act. We're going to have to record the meetings. We're going to have to take minutes. We're going to have to make sure that there aren't anybody violating the rules of the Open Meetings Act. There's just a hornet's nest of issues that can come up if you do that, particularly if you have 5 committees. Now, if all you're trying to do is increase participation and get people to comment on different things, I don't care what you call it, but I think you can just have a meeting saying, hey, I'm meeting with anybody who wants to confer about this issue that's coming before the board. And then you can report back the sense of the community at the board meeting without triggering Open Meetings Act issues.
Can I make a comment on the committee issue? Martha?
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
I don't think we'll ever have 5 committees going at once, but if we did, we'd really need to work out how we envision those communities to work, who serves on them, et cetera. One thing the board needs to remember, we have 2.5 people working that are not maintenance. And if there's committees going on and Natalie or I need to be there, that's just more evenings, more meetings that we're already overextended on. This past summer, we probably had 30 special events. There's only 90 days in the summer. Somebody has to work those. So those are things to consider. The staff is currently overstretched in many directions. You know, we really, if this was more of a forum type thing, it would be better for us than a committee where you get in the Open Meetings Act, like Charles just said, you got to record it. Now, Natalie's our expert in recording and technology. She's overworked. We have to be very careful. I would suggest we take our time and discuss this more as we work out details to see how we could best accommodate the best of both worlds. But
I have a question for you, Matt Rogers. When committees are formed, is it standard practice that staff from the organization is always a part of the committee, or could it be, as you say, one board member and then community members and that's it?
It depends on how we want to structure things. I also don't believe that there's any requirement that we record a meeting. There need to be minutes from a meeting, but there does not have to be a physical recording of a meeting to be in compliance with the Open Meetings Act.
That's correct.
So I don't think we need to have somebody who physically is able to record everything, as long as you have someone who is taking notes and recording minutes that then talk about what was discussed, who was present, et cetera, et cetera.
And also I'll just add to that, for the duration of us meeting virtually, which obviously applies to our one existing committee and could and probably should apply to other committee meetings, you know, were they to exist. We are using Zoom like we are right now. And, you know, Natalie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that we would be able to, and that there are even instances of this happening where the Zoom account is used, but it doesn't require a staff member to be there. I think there's a way to set up another host, for instance, and stuff like that. So I think the technology is there to allow for additional meetings. That doesn't also mean every single minute of those meetings is requiring staff to be there. I could be wrong.
I think it's more about like creating the meetings, emailing the meetings, making the links, dealing with like technical issues within, you know, circumstances, that kind of thing.
Okay. I would envision though that when we're back to being in person, whenever that may be, that communicating in order to set up meetings, scheduling them, there would still be that. But, you know, it might be as simple as a meeting happens in the upstairs, you know, conference room type thing at a certain time. And, you know, so I'm kind of thinking out loud. I apologize, but
Assuming all of that happens within the committee itself, you know, somebody in the committee is taking minutes, somebody within the committee is emailing and coordinating things, then yeah, theoretically, I would not be needed for all those things.
Mm-hmm. I just want to add, because I've talked to Matt Rogers about this, and I am on board with the idea of committees simply by virtue of the part of the point being that not only do we offer community members with certain areas of expertise, professional work, et cetera, interest level, not only would we be offering the community in the form of individuals who choose to get involved, the opportunity to have an official role and help in a certain way, but we're also, as an organization and as a board, spreading out the discussion, the work, the talk, the getting together, the labor, really, of everything that we do and want to additionally do into different groups. And you know, it does have to be done the right way. We saw tonight that there are multiple people who take issue with the way that the Ready Committee recommended a hiring, you know, a situation of recommending someone to hire. But that committee's brand new. We haven't gone through this before. You know, we can learn as we go. So I just want to express support for the idea. I don't think it necessarily needs to happen immediately. I also don't think we need to generate multiple committees at once. And just to say that we did, I think we could probably prioritize what we think we could benefit from the most and have that be the next committee that comes into existence. So that's my 2 cents on it tonight. I think somebody else had their hand up. Matt Mitchell.
Sure. I appreciate the sentiment of getting more people involved and kind of fostering community discussion and buy-in and involvement. I don't see the need for 5 committees at this point, nor have I heard any specific committee that is needed. So I guess that's my question: is what committee would you suggest would do a better job than?
So yeah, I mean, I think there's several different places that you can use committees. I think you could use I think that there could be a marketing committee. How do we communicate with people? How can we better communicate with people that are in our district? Do we have a program committee that helps work with the program director in order to make sure that what we're providing is what people want? People are able to bring ideas to us, and it's taking some of that work away from her, so there can be a group discussion about it, so she doesn't have to come up with all the ideas for what we do. There can be a finance and legal group. I mean, I can come up with a billion committees. I'm not saying we need all of them, but I'm thinking what I want to do is start the discussion about what types of committees do we think would be beneficial, And how do we go about creating those and engaging people? A facilities committee where literally you talk about the facilities of the park. And when these things are discussed, for example, the barbecue issue, which I know took a lot of board time and was a big discussion point, could have been handled in committee, and then a final presentation with a recommendation could have been made to the board for the board to weigh in on. And the board doesn't have to accept whole cloth, yes or no, what the recommendation is, but it has a lot of those key questions answered before it comes to the board. And that's what I would like to see happening. You know, is those discussions occurring with citizen volunteers, that then we are able to get more voices involved in that group. You know, so if you have 2 committees and each one has 5 people on it, that's 10 more people that we're hearing from.
Sure, I definitely agree with that sentiment. In my experience, there's not 10 people out there who are chomping at the bit to be involved in the decision-making process. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what Matt Rogers already said back to that point, which is that when we put the word out that we are looking for particular expertise and we want individuals to kind of join in a very specific way if they want to and they feel that they're qualified, I think we might well see that we had a lot more, you know, interest and engagement than we do right now. I don't buy it that people aren't chomping at the bit to get involved with what we do. I think it's kind of on us that we're not getting the word out well enough about who we are, what we do, what we would want help with. I think if we were to put that out there, we might be surprised at the response we would get. And you know what? If we put it out there and we don't get the response, then we don't get the response. It's not the end of the world. But being open to moving in that direction and expanding in that way, I think is a cool idea.
I think that, you know, people like the other 2 people that came and interviewed for the commissioner position, you know, I would hope like people like that would be interested. They were interested in being on the board. That'd be a good way to, you know, I don't know that we'll find 10, but
at the same time, 2 years ago, when there was not a Ready committee, was the feeling that nobody would join that. And we now have a Ready committee, and I don't know how many people serve on the Ready committee, but we have volunteers who are doing that because it's something that they want to work on and something that they are interested in. So that was just my line of thinking. And I really just wanted to start the discussion. I'm not saying that, you know, we need to vote next week or next month at, you know, to create committees and name people and everything like that. But I kind of wanted to gauge the interest of other people on the board and see sort of what their interest level was in doing this. Because I mean, I can't go out and create a bunch of committees and staff a bunch of committees and everything else. I mean, I would hope everyone would be on board with that if that's the decision that we make as a board.
Yeah, Jerry?
Mine is more a mechanical thought and issue, not philosophically for or against the matter, but the discussion of minute taking triggered the thought, and the Ready committee is a good example. And then this is kind of the benefit for Matt Rogers as new as a commissioner, and I don't remember where Mick was in the process of joining us when that got started, but the Ready committee is kind of a unique committee in that it is by design arm's length from the district. The district is not intended to be seen as running it, managing it, controlling it, owning it, or anything. It's a community providing input, community committee providing input to the park district. And so when the issue of minute taking surfaced, you know, first it was going to be volunteers, then it evolved to we need to pay someone to take the minutes. And our corporate secretary, or our corporate minute taker, is on the park district's payroll and paid a salary, Julie. The Ready committee, we could not do that because of the arm's length nature of it. And that was with the concurrence of the outside consultant. So in that case, we're having to pay a stipend separately to an outside, they're not on payroll. It's the key thing. We're not issuing W-2s for them and, all the stuff that goes with being on payroll. So my only point is, as you go forward in formulating this, be sensitive to, is it a committee outside the district advising the district, or is it a committee of the district operating the district? And when you get to minute taking, will it be paid or unpaid? Stay very clear. And there are payroll versus non-payroll implications to that. That's all.
Thanks, Jerry. Does anybody else have any issues, questions, discussion? And if not, Matt Rogers, do you want to say anything final on this one?
No, I would just be very interested, to not follow up Open Meetings Act. I would be very interested in having sort of one-on-one discussions with various commissioners so that we can sort of discuss it. I can find out what your concerns are, so that we can hopefully move toward this. I would very much like to try this. I think it would be a great idea. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But in looking at the number of committees and other volunteer organizations that function within the city, and I don't mean the city as the corporate entity, the city, but as in the residents of Evanston being involved on various boards and committees for not-for-profits, et cetera, et cetera. I think there are people who are willing to help. We just have to make sure that we ask them for the help and we guide them in a certain direction and make their voices heard. Like I said before, nobody wants to be a part of a committee that never is heard by the board they're advising. So I think that would be key. But that's kind of where I am. Like I said, I just wanted to open the discussion on this.
I for one, like the
Oh,
idea.
Debbie, I'm sorry. I was muted. I was trying to call on Mick because he had his hand up.
Go ahead, Nick.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it could be good. I definitely think formation of committees could be a good way to help Ridgeville. Matt, Rogers, I agree with you in the fact that I think by reaching out, take marketing, for example, right? I think I've heard you speak on this before. You spoke on this in your interviews. I think Ridgeville could, not that our staff doesn't do a great job with the brochures and everything else, but I think reaching out to the community and finding out what they want. Basically, if you reach out to people who know marketing, who do marketing, right, and that's their passion. If you gave them the opportunity to help their park district, that might be something they'd be interested in. So I do think there's the opportunity to find people who would want to give back in that way. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't have the time to head up another committee right now. That's not something I personally am interested in. But I would be in full support of other commissioners helping out the park district in that way. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Mick. Debbie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that thinking about that whole barbecue thing, it sounds really good to me to have had a committee to kind of discuss all that stuff and then bring it to the board. That sort of sounds really positive to me. We took up a lot of time at board meetings. So I think, while it seems like more time, using that again as an example, perhaps the committee meeting would take time off the board meeting. So you're just switching around hours. It's just a thought.
All right. I think, yeah, Natalie.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah.
Matt, will you just talk a little bit about just in terms of like functionality of the committee, how does that work for the staff? So if you had a program committee, for example, What is my involvement with them? Do they make recommendations to me similar to how the Ready Committee does with the board? You know, the programming that exists has entirely come from the community. I do surveys, I talk to people, I do
Right.
emails. So that's all. People approach me from the community with classes that already exist. So like everything that happens now is directly from a community member. So I'm just curious, like, how does that work with me in relationship with, and Brian and the rest of the staff with the committees?
And I think that's something that needs to be discussed. How would a program committee make your life easier, and help you formulate what you want to do programmatically? And how can you use that group of people to help you accomplish those goals? So if you have 10 new programs people want to do, you have to help create curricula for those. You have to find teachers for those. You have to do a bunch of stuff. Is there a way that a committee of people can help you do those things? And I don't know the answer to that for sure. But I think that would be something that we would look to you for guidance on, to try to remove things from your plate so that you don't have to do as much of that sort of stuff. You know, same with marketing. You know, what can a marketing committee take away from you and help free up more time for you? And maybe the marketing committee takes away the time so you have more programmatic time or something like that. I don't know exactly how it all works yet.
Okay.
I know how it works in other committees, but in other organizations, but I don't know necessarily how it works here. But I think it's worth having that discussion to try to figure out if we can make it work. And it may not work. It just may not work, period. But I think it's worth pursuing and having that discussion at least.
Cool, thank you.
Alrighty, unless we've got anything else on that particular point, we are moving into call of the commissioners. And I'll just go around here. Commissioner Braun.
No, pass.
Okay. Commissioner Mitchell.
I just wanted to echo some of the other sentiments that folks have made about how lucky we were to have worked with Dr. Effiam. And my thoughts and prayers go out to her family. That's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Morrell.
Pass.
Commissioner Rogers.
No, other than just to sort of echo off of what Commissioner Mitchell said, you know, kind of, I think we were very lucky to find someone like Dr. Effiam to help get things going. And she brought a lot of knowledge and experience to the table. And I think she will be sorely missed, and thoughts and prayers go out to her family as they go through this difficult time.
I would also like to say that I'm just really sad about Pat. I'm really sad she's gone. I loved her, and I'm really thankful that I got to know her. When I was thinking about how sad it is she's gone, I had this sort of revelation where I realized that I could have never met her, you know, and never known her. And I'm really sad she's gone. But I'm really just left with feeling so thankful that I got to know her in the first place, and the effects she had on me as a person and my life, and of course the work she helped us do at Ridgeville will live on forever. So yeah, that's all. All right. Moving on to citizen comments here at the end of the meeting. I don't know if we have anybody who has joined us, and I'm trying to figure out how to get the chat out of the way. There we go. So feel free to speak up if anybody is here. I don't see anybody. Next on our agenda is going into executive session.
Yes. I forgot to make that link. So I just did it and I've emailed it to you all now. So it's now in your inboxes.
So, thank you, Natalie. I saw that. So we're still doing that version of it where we jump off of this link, go to executive session, come back here to adjourn.
Yes, but we don't have to close this one out anymore. So I'm going to leave this guy open.
Okay.
You come back when you're done with executive session. Everything's being recorded.
So we need a motion to go into the executive session.
Mhm.
You'll go into executive session. When you come back, you can then have a motion to terminate the meeting, but everybody else will just leave.
Right, and we'll be alone at that point, Natalie, right? So we'll just let you know what time we.
You don't
or
even
you're-
have to, because I don't have to shut this down. I meant, I'm sorry, Charles. I meant technologically. We're all
Right, so you'll from the recording, you'll be able to see at which point we rejoin and end and all.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So would somebody like to make Jerry? Sorry, were you trying to say something? Oh, okay. Just saying bye. Okay. Would somebody like to make the motion to go into executive session?
This is Braun. I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Roger seconds.
Great. And Julie, if you would roll call that vote.
Ron,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yep.
Morel,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
and Gaines.
Yes. All right. Goodbye to everybody who is not coming with us to the executive session. I think we can go ahead. We're 4 of us are ready to vote. Does somebody want to make the motion for Natalie?
Sure. I move that we increase Natalie Sallee's current base wage by 4% to a total of $44,559 with no change to her corporate secretary compensation.
Roger seconds.
Great. And I'll roll call everybody here. Commissioner Braun?
Yes. Did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Commissioner Morel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
And Commissioner Gaines? Yes. Great. That is it. Would somebody like to move to adjourn?
Braun, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Great.
Mitchell
And,
seconds.
Mitchell seconds. Great. I will roll call that vote as well. Commissioner Braun?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Commissioner Morel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
And Commissioner Gaines? Yes. All right. Have a good rest of your night, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good night.